So this is my Glacial Bolt Amazon that I've been playing and kind of min-maxing, iterating upon over the last week. And I thought this would be a perfect time to kind of bring it all together and tie a knot. I have at this point reached level 92. I have really nice rare gear. I don't have anything super expensive with like 10 plus divines, although we will be talking about that later as well. But this guide is made to pull you from level 1 to all the way, if you want to, level 100. This video guide will be accompanied by a full written macro guide, so if that's more your speed, there it is. Whatever you need though, timestamps are up here right now. And before we get into the video, just a quickie word from today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is an online learning platform that teaches you backend development with tactics learned from game design. This makes it way easier to motivate people to actually learn code, and you also get better at it while having fun. Programmers also have amazing earning potential. In fact, the median salary for backend development in the US in 2023 was $100,000. The platform is designed to get you to actually start coding, because that's just the only way to learn. They'll teach you backend development from start to finish in the Python and Go programming languages. You can earn XP, levels, achievements, complete quests, and also possibly get a spot on the leaderboards. So if you're interested, use code Palsteron for 25% off your first purchase. That is either a month or a year, whatever you prefer. Link will be down below in the description. But with that being said, let's get back to the video. But let's get started. First up, the Glacial Bolt mechanics. Glacial Bolt is a crossbow skill that scales with attack damage. It doesn't always look like it, but it is just a bolt that spawns ice crystals. Right here, if you press Alt, you can go from Glacial Bolt to Ammunition over to Wall. These are the ice crystals that are spawning, and there's a lot of pieces in those ice crystals. So not all of them are like the damage. These are all like segments, and each of the segments can deal damage on explosions. And even though these look exactly like frost walls, they actually scale with your attack damage. So they do scale with your crossbow, they do scale with weapon damage, as you can see right here. So you fire an arrow, you spawn ice crystals on detonation. Okay, so the crystals need to be blown up to deal damage though. How do you do that? Well, there are really two ways for this. During campaign, I basically put on artillery ballistas, and then whenever enemies are near these ice crystals, the artillery ballista will attack the enemies, which will then proc all those ice crystals, which was fine enough. But for endgame, it is not up to par. Now, what we came up with is a cost on freeze setup. Cost on freeze, basically, whenever you freeze a target, gives you energy. And if you get to a certain amount of energy, you then proc whatever is on there. So for example, here I put on freezing mark. Now, the higher the cost speed or the cost time of whatever you want to proc, the harder it is to proc. So for example, you saw last league the comets flying down, but that got nerfed very quickly. However, comets had like a 2-second cost time. This one only has 0.5 because we're not really using it for its intended use, but it does exactly what we want it to do. So what happens is the cost on freeze procs exactly whenever the bolt goes down on an enemy here, and then the walls are already up whenever freezing mark procs, and the freezing mark is attached with a Nova, and this Nova also deals damage, and it also scales with attack damage. Something a lot of people don't know. It kind of looks like a spell. It does not use your weapon. It has its own base damage here, as if it was like a mini weapon or whatever, but it does have damage effectiveness. Now, the artillery ballista seems a little bit out of place, but it can actually help quite a lot. If you hit and it connects and you, for example, fight freeze immune or very high ailment threshold enemies, sometimes it actually will not freeze. And the funny part, it's often like very small enemies. I don't know if they're bugged or something, but sometimes normal mobs will actually not get frozen. They will just get knocked back. And in those situations, the artillery ballista helps out a lot. There's also certain rogue exiles that I'm pretty sure are either immune to freeze or they just get knocked back more. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but that can be an annoyance where the artillery ballista comes in handy. You can also put Calling Strike on our artillery ballista, and the rest is just scaling a little bit of damage, so it actually has enough damage to proc the ice walls. So that means this Nova also scales with all your passives and all your buffs to attack damage and elemental damage with attacks. And it also has more freeze buildup, so it's actually way more likely to freeze itself. I'll quickly show you in a map how that kind of looks like. So this is how it would look like normally, right? The ice walls just stay there and have to be destroyed. But let me see if I can chunk up a little bit together. So for example, if I fire it in here, you can see all these explosions are basically freezing marks chaining, and on contact, yeah, everything just kind of explodes. Yeah, that is basically how you clear. I can do a little bit more. Sometimes you can put an artillery ballista in between. Artillery ballista is also pretty nice. Rare just gets chunked, insta frozen with all the freeze buildup we have. And yeah, this is just kind of how you traverse the map. And yeah, the playstyle is incredibly fun. There are a few things and a few kinks that we have to talk about a little bit later to make this work, but in general, yeah, it has been, I mean, you can see it has been absolutely fantastic. Now, a few things unique to Glacial Bolt. The first one is the ice crystals scale their HP with levels, basically balancing out that this gets stronger and stronger. It has 10,000 life at my current level, which is 19. Now, it scales pretty hard up to level 20. If you can break a level 20, you can also break a level 24, 25. After that, they don't really scale all that much. So if you have like +2 levels on your crossbow, that is fine later, but early on, do be careful. And that's important because you want to put quality on and you can't down level. So you don't just want to have to make a new Glacial Bolt and then put quality on again. So this is something you have to figure out on your own. For example, I was running around with a level 12, level 13, level 14 for a while. And the important part here is basically the better your crossbow gets, the more damage on hit you will deal. Attack speed gives you more DPS, but you need more damage on hit to proc those ice walls with one hit. Don't level it too quickly. Everything else goes. Glacial Bolt is a little bit questionable. Very important to level your freezing mark so that your Nova deals more damage. Important to level your artillery ballista so it deals more damage to proc the walls easier. Be a little bit careful with the Glacial Bolt. Do it one by one. There is a few solutions to this though. The first one is icicle support, which makes it so your ice crystals have 50% less life. You will have to put this in your main setup though, which means that you will lose damage, right? But if, for example, you get to level up an extra 2 or 3 levels, that is kind of worth it because those levels also give you more damage. So it's not bad, it's just probably something you want to use temporarily, and it's better than having to apply quality to your next Glacial Bolt. And another thing you can do, although a lot more expensive, is you can get Shattered Crystal on your amulet. 60% reduce ice crystal life. This one is quite huge. It's even more than the support. However, do note that Emotion of Suffering right now is quite expensive. We're talking like, I think 30, 40 exalts. Not 100% sure how relevant that is, but in general, you only want to put it on a good amulet. I talked about the 20% quality on Glacial Bolt a lot now. Is it actually that important, pal? Yes, it is. It is one of the strongest qualities currently in the game. So the way crossbows work is you have to reload after every X shots. That's kind of how it's balanced. So for example, if I fire 1, 2, 3 times here, now it reloads just for a second. I have a lot of attack speed, so you will hardly notice it, but it is still something that you do notice. And on, like, normally, Glacial Bolt only has 1 bolt. So, for example, if I press Alt here, you will see there's no quality. Is it bugged? No. You have to go to Ammunition, and you will see that it actually adds 2 bolts. So you triple the amount of bolts that you can fire before reloading, which is incredibly, incredibly strong. So your first Exalteds, right, like even before you invest into your crossbow, should be going into quality. I'm probably going to repeat this again. That's how important it is. Which is also why I'm so adamant about not over-leveling it, because can't level it down, don't want to make a new one, so you have to apply quality again. Now, when it comes to mana, in a lot of builds, this can be an issue, but not really in this one. So nothing you really proc is that expensive. However, the higher you go, the more your freezing mark will consume, which is not really an issue though, because on single target, it doesn't really consume much. And on clear, what you need is this jewel right here. So forget about all the other mods. All that matters is recovered 2% of maximum mana on kill, and that mean 2, it rolls from 1 to 2. 1 is considerably less than 2. It's like double. Doesn't sound like much, but it is a huge difference. And while clear, the problem is your freezing mark is going to proc all the time. So it's an issue. It really is at some point. So get this jewel, get a sapphire. Now, sapphire is not perfect, obviously, because emerald would be perfect, but you can still get stuff like crit damage or just global damage. I think elemental damage you can also get on it. So you can get a few good things on top. I actually had a really good jewel here, but I bricked it, as you can see. Maybe you can get an implicit with attributes or resistances as well. But that is how you fix your mana. And most of the other mana just comes from intelligence. And honestly, I've never really ran out of it. On single target, it's very easy. On clear, once you have that jewel as well. Now, before we get into items and passive tree and everything, I want to quickly talk about the crossbow, because this is a little bit of an outlier to how you would usually scale a crossbow. For example, with my overlay right now, you can see that my crossbow only has 346 DPS, which is very, very low, right? In endgame, you'll see weapons like 600 plus that are clearing the same content as me. So what is going on there? Well, it is because of the new Ascendancy, the Amazon. So let's quickly talk about it. Amazon has a node here called Penetrate. Attacks using your weapon have added physical damage equal to 25% of accuracy rating on the weapon. Now, that means only what's on your weapon, like literally, like nothing from your rings or anything or any increases count, only what's written on here. So you can see I have 2 runes here that give me in total 220 accuracy, and then I also have 641 accuracy. Now, if we do the math here, this 861 accuracy times 0.25 for the 25% of added accuracy added actually results in 215 added physical damage. And that is not multiplied by any percentage. It is not base weapon damage, otherwise it would be beyond broken, but it is still applied with your attack speed. So your attack speed scales this, so times 1.86, and then you will basically see that this adds another 400 DPS to my weapon. So if you look again, I actually don't have 346, I have 746 DPS on this weapon, which not only makes it a lot easier to find a weapon, it also means that you can scale way higher in endgame. Now, if you already have like a very expensive, like 600 DPS weapon, honestly, I would just sell it to a Deadeye and just buy a new one because it is just too broken. I mean, you could say you could replace Penetrate and maybe get in for the kill, but honestly, it is not even comparable. With that said, let's get into Amazon right now. And the most important node you have to understand is Critical Strike. Chance to hit with attacks can exceed 100%. Gain additional crit chance equal to 25% of access chance to hit with attacks. So the maximum chance to hit with this is 150, which means that with 25% you can get up to 12.5 base critical strike chance. That will not really happen. It will be more like 10 or so, but it still will triple the amount of critical hit you have. You do get other crit as well from your offhand, more on that in the item section, but in general this is incredible. However, it's not just sheet accuracy. It actually matters how far you are away from the enemy, because accuracy falls off the further you are away from the enemy, so does your critical hit chance. You can actually see this if you, for example, open up Glacial Bolt right here. So you go to walls and you scroll down, it will tell you estimated main hand critical chance from hit chance. This divided by 4 is what you get from the Ascendancy in terms of crit chance. You can see right here that if you stand right next to the enemy, you will get 102 divided by 4, whereas if you stand far away, it can be up to 73 divided by 4. Quite a big difference, which doesn't mean you have to get yourself killed against bosses. It just means to understand that whenever he's frozen, for example, you want to be right next to the target. Then we have Penetrate, which I already talked about in the weapon section right before this, and it is just a lot of damage increase. It also makes it a lot easier to find a weapon. Our third Ascendancy will be Stalking Panther, which doubles evasion rating from helmet, gloves, and boots. Now this is very, very good mid-game because you're going to be wearing these rares where you have a lot of space for evasion. In end game, which we'll talk about at the very end, there is an alternate universe where you actually don't want Stalking Panther and you just go full glass cannon, full damage. That will be a thing as well. And your fourth Ascendancy will be Predatory Instinct. This is basically weakness is basically up round about half the time, which means you get round about 20 to 25% more damage against rares and uniques. That's basically all it means. And before we get into the items, a quickie about your offhand. So you can see your main hand here with a crossbow. However, there is a offhand setup, and I have a spear and a unique focus. The spear is there to jump around. So Thunderous Leap is basically there to traverse annoyances, right? Which is going to be, sometimes you just shoot in a bad way, right? And yeah, maybe you can't run, but maybe the stone is right here and you actually can't run through it and you can't dodge roll. I mean, in this case you could, but let's say you can't, which happens in indoor maps. Then you just press, for example, here E, and you jump over it, right? So for example, this would be a good example, and then you E over it. Pretty easy. But the offhand is actually way more important because this one gives you critical weakness on spells. Now, we're not a spellcaster, but what we can do is we can actually snapshot this with a skill on weapon swap. The way you do this is, in our case, we have Eye of Winter, which has a lot of hits. We support it with Unleash support, which means we're just going to cast it once. It fires out 3. We get a lot of these critical weakness procs. And what you have to do is you have to go to this menu right here, and you have to untick this one, right? So this is how it will look like. You have to untick this so that it automatically swaps to your offhand whenever you're casting Eye of Winter, which will then kind of look like this. It automatically swapped me, as you can see, and it will cast these. And each and every single one of these projectiles will apply critical weakness, which gives us extra base critical hit chance. This is very important to time on bosses. But let's go over our skill setup first with support gems. Glacial Bolt, once again, 20% quality, super important for those extra bolts so you don't have to reload as often. Then we have Primal Armament, which is just more weapon elemental damage. Ice Bite is incredible because you're constantly freezing. This is always up, even on bosses. Usually I would stick it somewhere else, but just the fact that it is always up for 35% is just too goddamn strong. Cold Infusion, extra damage. Scattershot, extra projectiles means more walls. And then Bullseye at the end for more accuracy rating, which gives you more crit and also makes it a little bit easier to shoot from further away. In like boss fights that are a little bit harder, that have like mechanics, you don't want to stand right next to them, but also during clear, it is very noticeable. Then we have Artillery Ballista, which you want to level up as high as possible. It also has a quite nice quality, which reduces its attack time. Once again, this is there to pop up crystal against bosses. Super, super important. We support it with Culling Strike to call enemies, Fire Infusion, and then Martial Tempo for fast attacks, and Rising Tempest. As a 6th link, I would probably get extra projectile speed just so they're a little bit more responsive and you don't have to wait for their procs as often. Cast on Freeze, which has the quality of getting more energy gained, always great for mapping. Level it up as high as you possibly can because the intelligence cost is quite rough, so that will be around about level 16, level 17, whatever you need for your body armor anyways. That's roundabout where you're going to be. Then I have Freezing Mark, which I want to give more quality, but it's not the end of the world. It's a little bit of extra freeze buildup. This one, level up as high as possible. Then we have Impetus, Energy Retention, and Overabundance. Overabundance is a add at the end. Basically what happens is marks usually can only exist once at a time. Now what happens with big packs and why you saw those explosions when I showed you is because I have +1 to limit, which means 2 can exist at the same time, because if you overshoot on energy, you will actually spawn multiple of them, and then the limit could limit the chains. I didn't believe this at first, but I actually tried on it, and it was very, very nice. If you feel like you don't need this, put Overabundance on Artillery Ballista so you can have 2 down at the same time. I felt it was very strong. Herald of Ice has huge quality as well, so get that up. It goes from 1.6 to 2 meters. Incredible, obviously helps you clear quite a bit. And it is supported with one of the new support gems, Reach, which doesn't have a downside because Herald of Ice always hits, so the 80% less accuracy doesn't matter. 35% more AoE. Now pair that with Magnified Effect, which is another 30% more AoE, and that's what you saw earlier. Cold Mastery, just for a little bit extra damage. And then we have Execute, kind of to execute enemies that are low to kind of get the chains rolling. Then we have Hypothermia. Now Hypothermia is basically a curse that you place down on a boss. The reason you place it down like this is because you have Cursed Ground, which is super nice because you don't want to cast anything once the boss is up. You want to pre-place it. Once the boss is up, you want to DPS, right? So it's super, super good. Support that with Heightened Curse, which increases the magnitude, and then Ritualistic Curse for a little bit less delay. Actually, I misspoke. For increased delay, which doesn't matter, but you get increased area of effect. Without this, it's going to be a lot smaller, as you can see right here. And if enemies move, that's kind of annoying. Then we have Thunderous Leap, which once again is just there to get over your icy walls if they block you. There's not much important here. We have Untouchable while you're in the air, and we have a little bit of Consecrated Ground. I don't know, you can put in some other stuff, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Then we have Eye of Winter, which you don't have to level up at all. Level 13 is the lowest possible, 119 int required. Cold Exposure, well, whenever you hit something with Eye of Winter, it gets -20 resistances, which is super, super strong. You also have Unleash, so you fire 3 at once. As you can see right here, they all overlap and they all apply critical weakness from your offhand. Once again, I will remind you to untick this one right here so it actually works on your offhand. And we put Inevitable Critical in because we only get this critical weakness whenever the spell crits. So just a little bit of extra. And then at the end, we have 2 more reservations. So we have Cast and Freeze, Herald of Ice, which is a total of 90 reservations. So we have 70 left in total. The first 40 go towards Ghost Dance and Precision. Precision just gives you a little bit of extra accuracy. If you don't have enough accuracy, definitely remove this one. For example, if you only had 50 Spirit like me here, and you didn't have the 12 from a Solar Amulet, just remove it, right? This is the least important one. Now, Ghost Dance and Wind Dancer make up a lot of your defensive capabilities in endgame with your evasion, energy shield kind of theme. Wind Dancer goes up to 3 stages, basically gives you 30% more evasion rating in total, and then whenever something hits you, it will activate this Gale Force, blow enemies away, and reset the counter, and you will gain stages again. So you don't want to get hit too often, but basically what you can do is you can do Pin, so when enemies get Gale Forced, they get pinned, and they also get knocked back by wind waves. So it's a very nice defensive thing, and blind just for a little bit extra on top. And then we have Ghost Dance, which gives you also very nice quality for a total of 7% of your evasion as energy shield returned whenever you get hit. So right now I have 1,200 energy shield, and I have, let's see, my evasion is at 15,000. So as you can see right here, we do the math, 15,000 times 0.07. I get back 1,000 energy shield whenever I get hit. So if I'm traversing a map, you will see that my energy shield really never goes down. And that's not necessarily just because I don't get hit. It's also because you just don't notice, because it shoots up all the time, which is a huge protection against any sort of small hits. The only support besides precision, which gives you just another buff, is fast forward, which makes it so these Ghost Dance charges come back faster. Now, going over gear, we already talked earlier in the video about the crossbow and why accuracy is so important on it, so definitely check up on that. Otherwise, you just want an assortment of physical damage and cold damage. Fire and lightning is okay, although it does diminish the effectiveness of your cold infusion, unfortunately, and there's not really a good replacement for this. There's not that much that actually just straight up gives more damage, so I would hold out on those. Just get as much DPS as possible, plus the accuracy. In terms of suffixes down here, attack speed is the second best one. The best one would have actually been crit damage bonus, which is a more multiplier for all the crit damage bonus on your passive tree. It is extremely, extremely strong, and my next crossbow upgrade would 100% have that. Even if you're missing the attack speed, that crit damage bonus is way, way, way better, because it increases the damage that you do on hit, which helps with your ice crystals, whereas attack speed just makes you spawn them faster, which doesn't necessarily help. So it doesn't necessarily help with leveling up your gem if your icy wall, if your ice crystals are too tanky, right? For you to actually explode them. So attack speed is the second best one. Crit hit chance is not that great actually, because you already get so much. So those are kind of the stats you're looking for. And do not forget to get 2 greater vision runes in there. Other than that, one important factor is where do you get your spirit from? Body armor and amulet are the only ways to do so. Now, body armor can get up to 61 spirit, and if you get 60 spirit, everything is solved, right? But those are very, very hard to get, because you also want to get as much energy shield as possible. So how do you do that? Well, you can also get it on amulet up to 50, and then on a solar amulet, you can get an implicit on top. So you can kind of mix and match around, and once again, if you do not get enough spirit, you can always remove precision and free up another 10. 30% increased accuracy is quite strong though, so do look at least in mid game to kind of make this work, right? Now, in terms of body armor, the most important thing here is we talked about Stalking Panther earlier. This is one of the new ascendancies that we're taking. Evasion rating from helmet, gloves, boots is doubled, but your body armor is halved. So all that means is you want to get your evasion from those 3 on top, and your body armor should be only energy shield, as you can see right here. Now, any evasion here will get halved, so it's completely worthless. It does have quite high int requirements, but that is just kind of what you have to sacrifice. Int is not necessarily wasted, because you will get into mana issues later on, so it is nice to go from like 600 to 800. As for your amulet, other than spirit, you're looking for maximum energy shield, life. There's not really anything you want to do. You can do +3 to projectile skills. Just once again, make sure that you can break the ice wall. As for anoint, I currently have critical exploit, but the best anoint is storm charged. I think this costs around 50 exalts or something. I can actually afford it. I should probably just do it. 40 elemental damage if you dealt a crit, always 20% crit chance. This is the best. You can also check it again in POB if you really want to. I will link down to a POB if you're interested in that. But yeah, other than that, like I said, you can fix your Ice Crystal HP with Shatter Crystal if you really want to. Maybe get more AoE. If all you do is clear all day, Authority is probably a really good idea. Mana regen is really bad. That is completely unnecessary. On every suffix, on every earpiece, I can tell you already, attributes, resistances. That is all that matters. Like nothing else matters. If you can have, for example, on your ring, you can see attribute, res, res. Attribute, res, res. That is always what it comes down to. Attribute, like in this case, I don't have attribute, but I have double res. Maybe attack speed, but yeah. Res, res. I guess the belt is a little bit different because here I actually have charm slots. Charm slots are very, very important, obviously. More on that in a second. But yeah, otherwise, as much evasion as possible on these 3 gear pieces because they get doubled by our Ascendancy. Always quality up your gear and try to get the runes with increased armor, evasion, energy shield in, although you will see that my gear is also not perfect, so sometimes you have to fit in a little bit of fire resistance, for example, here in order to actually cap my fire res. But you can see my cold res is actually over, so it's not perfectly min-maxed. It is what it is. Also, my chaos res is not capped, but this is something if you don't want to die in end game tier 16 plus maps, it can take you down. In my helmet, I actually have one of the new talismans, the Bear Talisman, which gives 8% increased area of effect. Just a nice extra touch. It is not going to be the end-all be-all. It's not that important if you need it for something else. In terms of charms, I didn't min-max this, but the baseline is you want to be freeze immune, you want to be stun immune, and then the third one is kind of open, whatever you want. Bleed immune is good, but what I actually did, which is already going up in price quite a bit, is the onslaught charm. This makes it so whenever you're affected by a slow, you get onslaught, which gives you movement speed and skill speed, which is quite nice. Mostly this is nice in chilled ground maps because whenever you step on chilled ground, you get onslaught. Would I buy it again with how expensive it is right now? I have a lot of other things to upgrade, so I would probably sell it. This is one that is a lot min-maxier. I'd say just get an anti-bleed charm. For your flasks, I really didn't do much here. It's just increased charges gained, increased amount recovered. I mean, knock yourselves out. You can see I don't even have my glass blowers bubbles completely up, which I'm going to fix right after this video. But yeah, that's it for the gear. And once again, the offhand, which I talked about earlier. Now, on your spear, you want to have as much attack speed as possible so you can leap faster. And nothing else really matters here. If you have any better ideas, then shoot, right? Go ahead. And the focus, once again, this one is so goddamn important. Make sure you get a 5 stacks of critical weakness right here, just so it's more consistent for your Eye of Winter to apply full stacks. And finally, the passive tree. On the passive tree, what you want is increased damage, critical bonuses, and accuracy. For defenses, you want to take evasion nodes and then also the most efficient evasion energy shield hybrid nodes. Now, at the start, you're going to be pretty starved on attributes, and that is normal because a lot of these payoff nodes on crit actually come with attributes. Heartbreaking 10 strength, heart-stopping 10 intelligence, and then for the jugular 10 intelligence and true strike 10 dexterity. And I tell you to get them later in the guide, right? And that is obviously true. But do note that in the meantime, you kind of have to make do with whatever. So make sure you always respec your attributes as you go as needed, right? Refund passive, go for a different attribute, and then also make sure you have enough on your gear in general. Super important here at a certain point when you're geared and you have a lot of accuracy on different slots, you can actually spec out of these nodes, whereas I actually have them earlier on. Finesse is quite good for a little bit of a transition period. Otherwise, you're really only getting accuracy from these and from Eagle Eye. Very early, you actually don't even pass through Eagle Eye. This is something you'll do once you get your first Ascendancy at like level 18 or something. And very late, you'll take Falcon Dive. This is around about level 85 or so. Now, this attack speed per 250 accuracy sounds good, but you're not going to have that much accuracy early. So this is one of the last nodes you take. I think I took it at around about level 87. Otherwise, you can see we're getting a ton of movement speed all around. 2% movement speed here, 3 over there, 3 here, and also 3 here. So yeah, crit nodes, evasion, energy shield, attack speed, increased damage. Now, don't forget to press your life flask so you have Killer Instinct up for damage while you're on full life. I don't think there's too much to say here. I guess maybe about Snowpiercer, the 10 intelligence and the 15 cold pen here. Cold pen is just really nice, and there's not really another efficient way to get it. We're gonna talk about end game where there's actually maybe a better alternative, but yeah, you take Harness the Element. I guess Freeze Buildup is also interesting to talk about because Freeze Buildup makes it easier to actually proc your cast on Freeze. Otherwise, the Dex node right here, the Dex nodes right here help quite a lot. Not because you're going to be starved on Dex, but because with those, you can basically change all of these attribute nodes into Strength and Intelligence, which you're going to need a lot of. With that said, let's get into leveling. Now, if you look at the max roll guide right here, you will actually see that there is a leveling tree, but I'll also explain it here real quickly. So we open this in another one here, and we're going to start right from the get-go. So you can start with this build at level 31. Until then, you'll be using Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod, which are bow-based. So you're going to be looking for bows until level 31. You place down your lightning rods, and then you shoot at the lightning arrows and at enemies that are near the lightning rods, so the lightning rods chain on them as well. You can also put down flame walls in the video. I'm not doing it myself, but if you shoot through them, you get a little bit of extra damage. Like I said, it's all in the guide, but this is basically how it's going to look like. And the background footage is actually a bad example because they have nerfed a lot of early game ever since then. This is my day 1 footage, just so you're aware, and it's not glorious. I don't know how many builds actually have a glorious level 1 to 30. Obviously, you can make it easier with some twink gear, right? Like if you can already afford a bow, buy a high damage bow, high damage jewelry, and you're going to be absolutely breezing through the campaign. But if you're starting from new, it is what it is. The early game is pretty rough right now. Towards the end, when you approach level 31, which is where you get Artillery Ballista though, make sure you're already looking out for crossbows so you don't have to gamble for it later. And you don't want to be caught at level 31 without a crossbow, because that's probably going to be roundabout where the Act 2 boss is, which is pretty damn hard on a bow character. It's going to take forever, so make sure you kind of make the transition before, and now we talk about what that actually is. So here's the deal. Early on, you will not have enough spirit to actually do this custom free stuff. You need 100 spirit because you also need the Herald of Ice and all that good stuff, right? So don't even think about it early on. Early on, your playstyle will be Glacial Bolt plus Artillery Ballista. So always put down your ballistas, and they actually do quite a bit of damage early. You'd be surprised, and that's because they have their own weapon damage, and your weapon's probably gonna suck, so that is probably a good thing. But what they do as well is they will explode your glacial bolts like I talked about earlier. And early on, you actually want to go over abundance on your artillery totem to get +1 limit. So you're gonna be walking around actually with 2 artillery ballistas. This is kind of how it's gonna look like. You're gonna place 2 down, you're gonna shoot, and they're gonna explode everything. Another thing you can also do is actually do this, then swap to fragmentation rounds. And fragmentation rounds basically have inbuilt ice crystal destruction. This is kind of how GGG wants you to play the game, right? It wants you to do first swap to this, then swap here, then explode it. Now, you can do this. It's like 2-3 buttons. It's quite annoying in my opinion, but it is something nice to have whenever you're on bosses or whenever you feel Artillery Ballista is too clunky. But that's just kind of what it is. Don't shoot. Now, the number one thing I can just say is don't just shoot like while you're traversing randomly around, and make sure you get a spear set up really early on so you can actually use Thunderous Leap very early. So yeah, so that if you shoot and you screw yourself over, you're gonna have to traverse a lot during campaign. So yeah, make it traversable and make it not awkward with the icicles. Now you can actually see everything you want right here. So level 1 to 35, Lightning Arrow, Martial Tempo, Lightning Infusion, Lightning Rod, Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Flame Wall, and a Herald of Thunder is the first thing you take as your spirit. And then once you're swapping though, you want to swap to Herald of Ice, because Herald of Ice is going to support your now main cold skill. And here what you want is Glacial Bolt. Now if you found some Exalts and you can afford some Gem Cutters Prisms, buy them immediately. If you even get +1 extra bolt loaded, that is already such a huge difference. You will thank me later. Put on Ice Bite, Scatter Shot, and if you find a jeweler, which you get from the quest reward, but maybe you get lucky as well, or you buy one, they're very cheap right now. Get Cold Infusion as well. On Artillery Ballista, early on, like I said, you want overabundance on the ballista, so you can put down 2. It's actually quite a bit of your damage. Put on Fire Infusion and then put on Martial Tempo for extra speed. On the Herald of Ice, you'll be able to use Precision. I actually don't really know what else you can put on here. You can put on Vitality or whatever. Do this once you completed your second Spirit thingy. Now, Hypothermia is going to be very good with Heightened Curse. Curse Ground is a tier 3 support, so I didn't put it in here. But if you already have a Twink or anything, obviously use it as well. And then Thunderous Leap, like I said, for jumping. In terms of passive traits, pretty straightforward. What's going to happen, you're going to path for attack damage. It's all in there, right? You're going to grab the pen, and early on, all that matters is increased damage. Increased damage, no attack speed. Just increased damage, and you guessed it, more increased damage. Now, this is where, for the first time, we're actually going to take the accuracy, because this is where you're gonna ascend, and you're gonna get the crit node from your Amazon Ascendancy, and then you are basically going to path up top and take Blinding Strike. Now, at this point, you're already going to be respect in your crossbow, but nothing really changes. We're not taking any bow nodes. We're not taking any crossbow nodes, so you don't really have to respec anything. The first thing you will respec, though, is you will respec these 2 nodes for the accuracy nodes. So obviously now accuracy is very valuable, so you spec through here. And after that, you will just, yeah, basically just follow the tree. You get extra increased damage, skill speed, freeze buildup, damage, attack speed, pen, freeze buildup. But as you can see, I'm not going for crit all that early. That will happen a little bit later, but still during the campaign. This is around the end of the campaign where you will also see me then grab the crit notes on top. And honestly, it's just incredibly easy and just an absolute pleasure. Once again, make sure that during leveling, you do not over level your Glacial Bolt, because if you do that, you might get into a situation where your Artillery Ballista can't keep up and you're just gonna stand there with no explosions. Now, what about Aspirational gear? Now, obviously haven't dipped into like 50 to 100 divine builds, and obviously you can, I mean, you can pump all of that into Crossbow and it like double the damage that I currently have easily. Well, not easily, with 100 divines or something. But so yeah, GG Crossbow, obviously. Now, I already talked about how that would look like. But then there's also a few uniques that you could actually use. The first one is Leopold's Applause. This one makes it so you can actually penetrate enemies not just to 0, but to minus 50 resistances, which is basically 50% more damage, which is ridiculous. But you have to get the pen also from somewhere, which would, for example, be Pandemonious, which makes it so you blind chilled enemies, which doesn't do that much. We're already doing that. Has a little bit of cold res, but then it penetrates 75 res, which doesn't just mean that you will go below 0. It also means that you can most likely cut these pen nodes, which means you can probably also cut all of this and just grab even more crit goodness here or increase damage across the board. Most likely what you're going to go for is Cooked. And another thing is Heat Shiver, which gives you extra cold damage as fire per chill magnitude. This one is a little bit less important, and you would also have to reconsider the support gems a little bit, because you are reducing it with Cold Infusion, although I don't know 100% when that happens, so because gain is a little bit weird in endgame. I just put this one here because I think it's interesting in case you want to scale some chill magnitude. You can get quite a few, up to 50% as extra fire. It does have a little bit of resistances. It's not like insane, but definitely something you can play around with. Do note that all of these do take away from certain things, like your gloves will have 0 evasion, which means Stalking Panther has nothing to double, so that will be missing. Pandemonious means you have to get all your spirit from body armor, which will mean that you will have to have a very expensive body armor to keep up your energy shield. And then Heat Shiver, like I said, is maybe not the best. We'll see. Maybe I'll remove it out of the notes. Well, I'm not 100% sure. But that is the most damage you can kind of glean out for. Otherwise, Corruptions, getting a 3rd socket on your crossbow for that extra 110 accuracy would be that would be another, I don't know, 8-9% more damage. But yeah, in general, endgame is pretty open to go full class cannon, double, triple, times 4 your damage. I personally wouldn't recommend all of these changes if you want to do just endgame farming, because I don't think it's necessary for maps. But if for some reason you want to do Uber Pinnacles or whatever, and just, I don't know, farm them over and over, then, I mean, knock yourself out. This is definitely one way to play the build. But yeah, all in all, I'm pretty sure Glacial Bolt will be in some absolutely fantastic setups. There's also currently a Glacial Bolt Lightning Spear setup where you can basically chain off of all the walls. I'm sure there's going to be people who iterate upon this a million times. I personally want to try out other archetypes, but this has been a superb league starter that has made me a lot of currency for whatever I want to go next. And yeah, if you want to go for this instead of something like Galvanic Shards, then be my guest. This is definitely the more off-meta option, and for me also personally the more fun option, because I just love these cold explosions. But yeah, other than that, have fun. You can also just level with this, honestly. It's just a very good leveling setup. I know a lot of Lightning Spear builds that literally level like this. So yeah, if you want to change the build later, you're definitely not going to regret it either way. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.